What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel. And thank you guys for tuning in to another video. We are back, folks, and we are back talking BC Lions football. The playoffs and the Grey Cup playoffs, I should say, are here. We are now down to our sixth finalist in the CFL, and they will fight it out for the right to call themselves Grey Cup champions for the year 2025. So we are back, as hopefully you guys should maybe be aware. Obviously, we took a little bit of time away, I guess you could say, from our BC Lions coverage. Unfortunately, we had to take some time away, not anything that we wanted to do, just unfortunately with uh, Blake's schedule not really working out this season, and then myself kind of partnering with the conference, the BC Football Conference of the CJFL this season. My Saturdays and my content has kind of somewhat shifted on the channel, but nevertheless, folks, we are back, and we are back for playoffs. So, if you guys didn't already check out our video recently that we just uploaded on the channel, it was kind of our getting back into the BC Lions talk on the channel. We uploaded our "Why is Nathan Rourke the 2025 MOP in the CFL?" Go check that video out if you guys haven't. Uh, and let us know what you guys think. If you guys agree, let me know. If you don't, let us know who you guys think is MOP of the CFL in 2025. There's definitely a few candidates that are very deserving, and I think the discussion is needed this time of year with you know semifinals. We will find out in about 2 weeks' time who the award winners will be. So, other than that, folks, of course, if you guys are enjoying all the content here on our channel, getting back into things with the BC Lions, all of our BCFC coverage over the last, 3 or 4 months, if we're being honest, but over the last 3 or 4 weeks, it's been awesome to follow along, as obviously the Okanagan Sun have, as they are defending champions, and then they have one on the run towards another national championship. So go check out all of our coverage over there. We were able to sit down with Coach Miller the last few weeks during the playoffs. We were able to sit down with current players Jordan Falconer, Jarvion Williams, few talented Okanagan Sun players, and we will have more as we get near the Canadian Bowl, which is 2 weekends away. I'm very glad with how things worked out for the West Semi that I'm going to be able to line it up. Not even going to want to cross the bridge of next weekend when it is obviously Canadian Bowl and a potential West final. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. As I mentioned, folks, like the video, comment down below, subscribe to the channel. When you guys subscribe, hit the notification bell. You guys get notified every time we go live or upload a video like this one right here. Of course, you guys can find us on our social media platforms right there down below on Twitter @_CFNX or on Instagram @Canadian Football FNX. So today's video is a West semifinal preview, and we're going to be joined by a guest here shortly. But of course, how our previews have kind of worked all season long and in the past, we'll be joined by our guest here in a matter of moments, and then I'll kind of give my initial thoughts or kind of some of my thoughts, anyways, on the matchup. We'll get into maybe kind of our thoughts on the Lions offense versus Stamp defense, and then vice versa, and then we'll get into a three keys to the game, and we will get out of here within kind of about 40-ish minutes time. So without further ado, let's bring in our special guest to talk a little bit about the West semifinal and a little bit about the Calgary Stampeders. Alrighty, folks. Joining me now is the Hall of Famer, friend of the program, and of course, a voice of the Calgary Stampeders, one Mark Steven. Mark, how you doing?
Oh, good. Good to be back in the playoffs. Looking forward to our trip to the coast and seeing the Lions and Stamps go at it.
Yes, I would try to upsell the West Coast, but right now, as I look out the window, Mark, it is pretty ugly. But it hasn't gotten too cold quite yet, so we can't complain too much. But as you mentioned, back in the playoffs, and these two teams are very familiar with one another, as the BC Lions and Calgary Stampeders will match up, I believe, for the third time in 4 years, the past 4 seasons. But Mark, before we get into the matchup and all that sort of stuff, I'm just curious. Another season has come and gone. Once again, as we kind of we talked back in the draft and before the season, and now before you know it, the season is over with, and we're into playoff football. It's one and done time. Just how are you feeling overall after the season, and kind of just another season has come and gone?
Well, specifically to the Stampeders, it was certainly a bounce back season. I mean, they missed the playoffs. There was a lot of pressure on the organization to pick it up and be better. They did this year equal their win totals of the last 2 years combined. And, they were very aggressive in the offseason. I think virtually all of the moves paid off. Vernon Adams was number one, but there were many, many others. Dominique Rhymes, Webb at safety prior to getting injured. Derek Moncrief has been a major addition to the team, and there's been others. So it's worked out, and they're in the playoffs. I think they're hoping for a home playoff date, but just didn't work out because last game of the year went to Saskatchewan. Anyway, just don't worry about that last game of the year. They're in the playoffs. So here we are.
Yes, and obviously things go a little bit differently. Both BC and Calgary finishing with 11-7 records. This game could have very easily taken place in McMahon. So, when getting into the Calgary Stampeders season, as you mentioned, with all the additions in the off season, obviously, pretty much a completely new looking defense. I'm curious from your standpoint, Mark, with obviously being around the team not only during games, at practice and whatnot. I'm sure I know the answer from the professional athletes, coaches, and stuff like that, especially from the competitive side, and they would I would imagine kind of say that this season is obviously successful if we win the Grey Cup. But I feel like in many ways this season is already been successful. And as I mentioned, I know competitors, professional athletes think about it much differently than we do as fans and people that cover the sport. But I'm curious, for in your opinion, do you think maybe already that this is kind of a little bit of playing with house money, that the Calgary Stampeders have kind of set this foundation here moving forward and are going to be able to attack it hopefully for the next few years with guys like Vernon Adams and other guys on the defense kind of for hopefully a few years more to come?
Well, certainly, yeah, I get where you're going with that because, set the table. They host the Grey Cup here next year, and we haven't been spoiled here like in BC, winning Grey Cups at home all the time. So that would be a wonderful treat for the Stampeders. And, I know where you're going with that. The players say they're here to win the Grey Cup. They are. They should be. If they aren't, they shouldn't be on the team. But when they get a chance to step back after the season ends, whether it's Saturday, the following Saturday, after the Grey Cup, I think they'll take a lot of satisfaction in what happened here. But they can't let that seep into their mindset for another few weeks here.
Yeah, great answer. I thought kind of the same thing, especially with myself kind of being being honest, one of the more people that were probably down on Calgary coming into the season and just some of the question marks, not to, I think, some of the offense, but how great I think the defense was. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming, and that's kind of where I want to start, Mark, with the defensive side of things in Calgary. And as I mentioned, a lot of new faces in Calgary, a lot of question marks surrounding the defensive side of the ball, and obviously you get guys like Clarence Hicks, Jalen Hutchinson that have been kind of the tip of the spear for you guys defensively this year. Maybe just talk a little bit about what it's been like to watch them play this year and kind of, as I mentioned, be the tip of the spear defensively. I believe Hicks 12 sacks, Hutchinson with 8 sacks, 20 sacks combined. I think even for a lot of maybe even casual fans, still getting to know who these two gentlemen are, and two guys that I believe are I know Hutchinson kind of joined the Stamps late last year, but basically their first years in the CFL. So as I mentioned, with kind of like setting the table up for years to come, these guys you would think will be in Stampeders uniforms hopefully for another 4 years and will be able to take another step. So what have you seen from them two in terms of kind of being the leaders in terms of play on defense?
Well, certainly Hutchings, who was here for a bit at the end of last year. He's a major disruptor inside. He's very big, very smart. Was able to keep up with everything that's going on. So he's been a major disruptor on the inside. Then you mentioned the play of Hicks. He's a tremendous player. A lot of tackles for losses and other defensive plays as well. The 12 sacks are impressive. He's a very, very quick. Most tackles can't handle him. He's that quick coming off the edge. The only thing I would knock on him, sometimes he boils over pretty quick, if you get my drift. And but other than that, he's been very good, a very good teammate. Listen, he's the last guy off the field at practice every day. He's working on trying something different and something unique. So lots of time for him. They've been very key. And you mentioned the line. They did reacquire Flo Ormelad in a trade in the offseason. Unfortunately, he's done for the year. He was injured just after Labor Day. And another guy inside on the line, Miles Brown, a big, big body they brought over from Saskatchewan. He does fill up the middle pretty good. And against that Horvath for the Lions, he better fill up that middle because he's just killed the Stampeders.
Yeah, great insight there, Mark, for sure. And I think for a lot of fans, maybe as I mentioned, some of the casual fans, maybe fans that aren't Stampeders fans, they kind of heard about this Hutchins guy earlier in the season. He was kind of, maybe some of the early talks of maybe a Defensive Player of the Year kind of candidate, obviously. And then Hicks is the representative from Calgary for this year's award. But I'm curious, I guess, as we kind of move forward here, Mark. We'll get back into the defense here in a second, but as I said, you're around the team not only during the games but at practice and whatnot. What maybe makes Dietrich Mills such a special, talented back, as he's had himself a phenomenal season, and has been a good player in the CFL the last few years, and had to kind of share carries with Peyton Logan in previous years, and obviously kind of in the shadow of Kadeem Carey a few years ago. But being able to kind of be that guy this year, obviously, I think 1,400 yards rushing, led the CFL. I think around 1,700 yards all purpose. What makes him such a talented back in your eyes?
Well, first of all, just from a straight physical viewpoint, great lower body, very powerful and very quick to make cuts. So that's that part. But really, the change came. He's a different person this year. Without getting too deep into it, I'd say last year he was a bit of a follower, maybe not as confident as he needed to be. He was rattled by some personal things back at home, and he wasn't headed in the right direction. But he now is. He did a few things, took stock of himself, and really recommitted himself. He's getting married this offseason to a good Nova Scotia girl, so things have really improved for him. As much off the field, just because, as I say, he was more of a follower, and now he's a leader and confident and comfortable in himself, and things have obviously paid off in that 1,400-yard rushing season.
Yeah, phenomenal season from Mills. Continuing on the offense, Mark, I was curious how to maybe frame this question surrounding, obviously, Vernon Adams Jr., with our familiarity with him, having him as our quarterback here in BC, and kind of, essentially wanted to ask you kind of, what are your thoughts on Vernon Adams, or kind of what he's given you this season? But I feel like I kind of know that answer already with, understanding who he is as not only a person on the field, but off the field, everything like that. But maybe talk a little bit about kind of like some of your preseason expectations, and maybe has Vernon Adams been able to live up to them?
For the most part, yeah, I would say so. I mean, the team has improved noticeably. Their play in the score zone is much better. He's elusive. He's, made some plays that are just hard to believe at times, the way he can escape the pressure and get out of the pocket. He hasn't been a dominant quarterback, but he's been a leader and, kind of a guy that's a distributor and gets things done that way. So I think he's done everything. Look, they've doubled their win total. He missed the one game. He did have a few games in the middle of the season, but mostly in September. To be blunt, the two games against the Lions, where he was not anywhere close to the top of his game. But he's regained his form, and down the stretch in the last three games, Hamilton, Toronto, Edmonton, I think he was fine. He did, and the thing is, he doesn't have to be the dominant, unquestioned number one player on the field. Just minimize the turnovers, and good things happen, and that's what he's done.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. I think Vernon Adams is a guy that's going to give his team every opportunity to win on a weekly basis. I think a little bit of recency bias may come into play, that with obviously, to start the year it was kind of MOP talks and whatnot, and that's why I kind of wanted to stay away from like what he's given the Stampeders this year, because I know that it's all the little things, right? The locker room side of things, and kind of building guys up. And I think that's probably maybe the biggest thing that he's arguably brought to Calgary this year, is kind of that that confidence, that belief within the team, the swagger as well, and kind of, I feel like, uplifting his teammates around him. And as you said, being a distributor, being a point guard, and obviously, if I'm being fully transparent with him coming in Saturday, as I mentioned, he's a quarterback that's good enough to give his team on any given week a chance to win. So the Lions defense will definitely have to be on their P's and Q's, and making sure that they have to make it like the other two previous games, and try to give him as hard of time as they can. So I'm curious, as we move forward here, kind of wanting to tie back a little bit to the defense. But Mark, as you know, we are the Canadian Football Fanatics. You are well aware. You're a good, as I mentioned, a friend of the program now. You've been around for our past two draft shows and whatnot, so you know how much we love the Canadians, and covering the Canadian side of things in the CFL. I'm curious if you don't mind maybe just talking about a few Canadians on the Stampeders this year that have been fantastic. Obviously, Jalen Philpott is the nominee for most outstanding Canadian this year, but obviously, with our ties to BC Calgary, Adrian Green has been phenomenal for you guys this season, and obviously has missed some time as well. Could probably have a bigger season, but obviously I think 6 or 7 interceptions on the year, a few pick sixes, has been, you know, I don't know if game changer, if we could go as far to say that, but has been a huge spark for that defensive side of the ball, especially, kind of going to that corner position from safety when he played with the Lions. And then I'm curious of, Christopher Fortan. Obviously, as I mentioned with our draft show and whatnot, he was, I believe, your representative for most outstanding rookie. And that could have obviously been, another nod to Mario Alford, but he was just unable to stay healthy because he had himself a pretty dynamic rookie season. But can you just talk about those three gentlemen?
Well, let's start with the most recent, Fortan. He was a real revelation. They liked him. Trust me, they had a lot of expectations for him, but he's exceeded them because Bryce Bell has missed virtually the entire season as the regular center. So they plunked a rookie in there and just said, go get him. And he has met the challenge and more. He's been terrific. He got a lot of votes for the top offensive lineman as well, as Zach Williams won it. But no, he's been fantastic. He was, as I say, there was a lot of expectations for him, and he met and exceeded them this year. He's been terrific. As for Alford, the number one pick overall, I know he got off to that crazy start with all of those amazing plays, and he got hurt, and the antler, and he's an amazing physical specimen at 6'6", and he can go up there and get it. He's got a great attitude. The one thing they do say that maybe has held him up a little bit is just a difficulty a little bit with recognition. He's learning the game. It doesn't come instinctively today to him, but it will in time. But that's maybe the things, but at the same time, it doesn't matter what you recognize. I recognize he's 6'6" and go get the ball. So he does have that, but he's still a rookie. You can't lose sight of that, even though he had that fabulous start. And and Green for sure a game changer. 6 interceptions, 2 went for touchdown, ironically, both against Toronto. So no, he's been very good out there. And there's been a series of injuries. They had to shake up the secondary a little bit due to some circumstances, but he's just plugged himself right in there. And I think he would have got either Canadian of the Year or Defensive Player of the Year had he played a little more, but he did miss a good chunk of the season. So that's the way it goes.
Yeah, I would agree with you for sure on Adrian. I think he's a very talented player and a guy that's kind of similar, young, kind of, I feel like maybe he has another step or two to get to his ceiling. It's kind of cool for you to kind of get that more insight on Damien as well, because to give a little bit more context for maybe people that aren't aware. Obviously, a guy that went down to play some major Division I football, I believe University of Utah, University of Syracuse. So still understanding the Canadian game, the Canadian feel, and stuff like that. And as you said, we'll hopefully be able to kind of learn and start to get better. And that could be a scary sight for opposing CFL fans for sure, because if he has another level or two to get to, it could be a problem.
Well, he didn't play much last year at Utah, like almost nothing last year, for reasons that I don't understand. The offensive coordinator there didn't like him, didn't feel confident in him. Well, all I can say is Utah has a new offensive coordinator this year, so we'll put it to you that way. But maybe he's a little underused, there was other things, obviously. It's not all about him. But, so let's not lose sight of the fact he really didn't play last year. And so his last football would have been at Syracuse in 23. So, hard to just pick that up on the fly. Will he do it? I have no doubt that he will do it, but no doubt that it's a little tough to do it today.
Yeah, for sure, Mark. So last few before we get you out of here, once again, appreciative of your time. I know it's a busy week this time of year. I'm curious when now we can maybe look towards the matchup, as I'm sure maybe you've started to do a little bit over the week, and kind of, I guess maybe just your general thoughts when thinking about, Calgary versus BC on Saturday.
Well, obviously, I think most teams in the league would have liked to postpone their date with BC in the playoffs as long as possible. They're really rolling right now, and they caught the Stampeders at the flat point in the season. The two games from a Calgary point of view were not very pretty. The Lions did dominate here in Calgary. They put up 52 points, and Stampeders made it close and respectable late in Vancouver, and certainly a lot of that was because of Nathan Rourke. He was tremendous. The ground game was tremendous. They unleashed the Xander Horvath. He was crazy, and it was a really, really good pair of games for Nathan Rourke. So Lions did everything right, and then Betts got loose as well. That's when he was starting to pick up bushels of sacks every game. So he was really good. So no, are the Lions favored? Yes. Should they be favored? Yes. But look, they're not going to be terrific forever. I don't think Rourke was at the top of his game in the Saskatchewan game. The Stampeders, I think we're a little embarrassed by their two games, so they've taken that to heart, and maybe we'll take on BC a little better. The Stampeders have been fabulous at avoiding turnovers, and if they do pick up the ball by a turnover, they've been good at cashing in on it. So it's a level field. There's no issues whatsoever. Vernon Adams' best game that I ever saw him play was as a Lion against the Stamps in 23 in the playoffs. So I've seen what he can do in BC plays. He was tremendous. So, And Diedrich Mills, he's on a roll right now. He's got so much confidence going on, and Rhymes and also Vernon Adams. I think they can do it. So are they the underdogs? Yes, but I don't think it's prohibitive. I don't think they're just going to sneak in the door and then sneak back out. If BC wins, they'll have earned it. I can say that.
Yes, they most definitely have more than a puncher's chance, I would say. I would say they kind of have somewhat. I'm going to kind of ask you, I guess, similar question, but I would say they kind of have, somewhat of the recipe as well to kind of attack a BC team, right? With obviously, as you mentioned, the run game. BC's defenses tend to be known to be a little bit light up front, can surrender some bigger run games at times, and then as you mentioned, and we've talked about already, the guys like Hicks and Hutchinson up front, right? If they're able to get pressure on Rourke and kind of able to, take up some of those lanes with Hutchinson and kind of contain James Butler and Horvath on the ground, it could be Calgary's day. And as I said, both teams finished with 11-7 records. I think
Yeah.
people are kind of overlooking that as well because BC, recency bias, I feel like maybe plays a little bit into it, right? But as you said, any given Sunday and or
Mm-hmm.
even any given Saturday, I should say, Calgary's going to come in here and be ready to go and be prepared. So I'm curious, Mark, last one for you here. Kind of similar, and you kind of almost answered it a little bit in that uh, answer you just gave us. But I'm just curious, in your mind, maybe what's kind of a pathway to victory for the Calgary Stampeders on
For Calgary to establish the ground game with Diedrich Mills, but they also have a battered up offensive line. They're actually going to sign here tomorrow Hunter Stewart, a guy that played for the Lions for many years, but he was let go earlier this year by BC. But they're really banged up on the line. That's the one issue I worry about. So if they can get out there and establish it with some, relatively untested guys on the line, I have no idea. I don't even know if Stewart's in shape to play. They're going to bring him in though and medically try to clear him. But they've got some holes there. Establish that. Continue what Vernon Adams has done the last few games, and that's avoid turnovers. It's not all him, but he's done a lot of that. I also have to say the punter has been very, very good. Mark Bassett was the team's rookie of the year. So indoors, if he can place the ball and pin the Lions and do very well, I think that will help them as well. So and don't throw at Robert Carter. He's really good. So that'd be another thing. But so yes, the Stampeders, I certainly have a chance to win. I get why there's the feeling that BC is the favorite. I do understand that, but I don't think the Lions should be booking their tickets to Regina just yet.
Absolutely well said. And for now, if you guys aren't throwing at Robert Carter, I don't know how much we're going to be throwing at Adrian Green, to be honest, as well. So,
Yeah.
Mark, once again, you've been so awesome to us over the years and been gracious with your time coming on here whenever we ask. And even last minute as well, we kind of put together this, I believe yesterday, whatever I asked you.
Yeah.
So, always appreciate you, Mark. Safe travels out west, and hopefully you get some nice BC weather, at least for the fall/winter this time of year.
Well, but it sounds like we're getting a great crowd no matter what else. It looks like tickets are moving very well. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yes, it should be a great atmosphere, Mark. And as I mentioned, safe travels, and hopefully we'll maybe run into each other on Saturday.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Awesome. That is the Hall of Famer, Mark Steven. All righty then. That was great. Once again, big salute to the Hall of Famer, one Mark Steven, voice of the Calgary Stampeders. As I said, he's been very gracious over the years, dating back to coast gridiron days, you name it. That's a if for sure. If you were around back then, you were an OG and you were a real one. So I appreciate you first and foremost. But it is about 7:30 and we're about 24 minutes into this. So the game plan from here is kind of give my thoughts on the matchup. We'll give a three keys. I'll give maybe a prediction, and then we'll get out of here. As being transparent, folks, for anybody that is, first of all, if anybody is from BC, they understand that the Canucks are playing the New York Rangers currently. And for anybody that knows who the New York Rangers captain is, it is one JT Miller. I'm going to leave it at this. I was, or maybe am, a JT Miller fan. I'm gonna leave it at that. Still a Canucks fan, obviously, but this one definitely was a juicy one that I had circled on my calendar. I believe is the cliche thing to say, but this is not a hockey podcast. This is not Canucks conversation or spitting chicklets, missing curfew, you name it. This is the Canadian Football Fanatics. So let's get back into business for about 15 minutes, and then we will get out of here. I'll give you thoughts on the matchups. We'll give you 3 keys, and we will put a nice little bow on our West semifinal preview. Once again, big shout out to Mark for jumping on here and chatting a little bit about the game, chatting a little bit about the stamps, which let's break this thing down, folks. As I mentioned, the Calgary Stampeders will be traveling to Vancouver to take on the BC Lions at BC Place Saturday, November 1st, the day after Halloween, of course, for a 2:30 p.m. kickoff from BC Place this Saturday. I am lucky enough I will be in attendance, which I am very looking for. I am very looking forward to being in attendance. Is what I'm trying to get out. Because, as Mark just alluded to, it should be a fantastic atmosphere. This will be my second playoff game, I believe, ever. Last year, obviously, the Lions were on the road. 23, I was able to be in attendance for that very game Mark's speaking about in terms of the Vernon Adams led BC Lions versus Calgary Stampeders. But to add a little bit more context to this matchup, as Mark said, obviously the Lions have already beaten the Stampeders this year twice. So let's kind of chit chat a little bit about that as we get into our thoughts on the matchup. Back in week 16, which is a conversation for another day. Obviously, we had this a few times on our weekly show. For anybody that isn't aware, we do a CFL weekly show over on the 13th Man YouTube channel. I would highly encourage you guys to come check out today. Excuse me. I would highly encourage you guys to check out today's episode. By the time this is uploaded, it will be today, as we are live every Wednesday on the 13th Man YouTube channel at 6 p.m. Pacific. Um, you know, we kind of chatted about, man, it's crazy that the CFL let this take till week 16 for the Vernon Adams, reunion game, revenge game, whatever you want to call it, versus BC. And that wasn't even a game that was in BC. That was the first game that was played in Calgary. The week 18 game was the one that was in BC. So let's start with week 16, which was a dominant victory, 52-23 over the Stampeders in Calgary. BC really did not, or Calgary really, I know it really wasn't competitive for most of that ball game as BC jumped out to a crazy lead. Nathan Rourke having unbelievable moments. His rushing touchdown that he was able to break multiple tackles from. I want to say it was like 28-7, 28-3, something like that going into half. And obviously Calgary somewhat claws their way back, makes it look respectable by the end. And you could argue 52-23. Is that respectable, Cole? Not too much. BC really dominated this matchup from start to finish, and was a good feeling to have at the time because BC was post Labor Day starting to get on this streak where I believe at the time would have been a game or two under their belt. Probably a lot of people outside of BC still a little bit skeptical, and they're able to pull off a big victory at the time over the Calgary Stampeders, who were arguably one of the hotter teams in the CFL, one of the more stronger teams, viewed across the CFL. So huge, feather in the cap of BC, and they end up doing it 2 weeks later, week 18 at home, 38-24. Another game that BC, I wouldn't say dominated for the most part, but controlled this matchup once again. Obviously, it was much closer. Vernon Adams, I believe, left this game at halftime. If I'm not mistaken, it was at halftime. It could have been after half, if I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. And obviously, it was the Jackson Finley kind of late slide. He didn't even slide. He went head first, and Jackson kind of came in finishing the play. And it was unfortunate for VA that he had to leave the game and couldn't come back. So BC winning the two matchups in the regular season, having the 2-0 season series or regular season series is virtually the difference between why this game is being played in BC Place and why it's not at McMahon Stadium. And it's a huge advantage for the BC Lions and one that they have to capitalize on, being able to play on their home field. So let's get into thoughts on the matchup. And obviously, we've talked 30 minutes already and haven't really talked much about it. We got to start there. The quarterback matchup, one Nathan Rourke versus Vernon Adams Jr. The MOP front runner, or at least should be Nathan Rourke versus Vernon Adams Jr. And this is a very entertaining conversation, I think, to have a very kind of, I feel like this surrounds, you know, is one of the main talking points around this matchup when it comes to BC moving on from Vernon Adams Jr. 14 months ago for Nathan Rourke, sending Vernon Adams Jr. to Calgary. And of course, they obviously meet in the regular season. Very well known. These guys are, you could somewhat call them Western Division rivals. Traded to a Western Division rival, and of course, it's only fitting that these two match up in a playoff game. It would have been even bigger if it would have been in a West Final, a Grey Cup, whatever it may have been. That being said, for me, I've already kind of went out on the ledge to go as far to say that for me personally, this matchup doesn't define who won the trade, who lost the trade. For me personally, as a BC Lions follower, supporter, as a Nathan Rourke follower, supporter, and not to say that I'm not a Vernon Adams Jr. fan, which I am. I just feel like, and people probably tend to think that I am a hater of Vernon Adams Jr., which is just not true. I feel like maybe I am maybe hard on him at times, but I feel like a lot of it is real. And to me personally, this matchup won't be defined that if Vernon Adams Jr. leads the Calgary Stampeders to win, that the BC Lions made the wrong decision. That this is, it's a fireable offense, whatever you want to call it. I believe that, as I said with the MOP conversation, Nathan Rourke this is only the beginning of Nathan Rourke. He is going to do this for, if you're a Lions fan, you hope years, possibly maybe decades to come. Shouldn't say decades. You should say decade to come. Um, Obviously, he is, young. He's not a spring chicken by any means, but he could still play another 10, 12 years in the CFL. Vernon Adams Jr., yes, could still play another 5, 6, 7 years in the CFL. I think this is the case that if, say Calgary does win this game, and obviously you could say, well, Cole, you're obviously very biased. You're a Lions fan. But it could be a very win-win situation. Because if we're being honest, who is the best player in the CFL this season? And even going forward, whether he wins most outstanding player or not, it's Nathan Rourke. Call a spade, whether you're a Stampeders fan, CFL fan, heck, bring Mark Steven back on here. I would think he would say the same thing. So it's no slight at Vernon Adams Jr. As I've said multiple times, it's kind of the unfortunate thing of the day and age we live in of, you can't like LeBron James and Michael Jordan. You must hate one of them to like the other. It's not allowed, apparently, where, yes, I am picking the side of Nathan Rourke, but that is not to say that I don't believe, as I told Mark minutes ago, Vernon Adams Jr. is a good enough quarterback to give his team a chance to win on any given week. And I wholeheartedly believe that. I believe he's a top 4 quarterback. I believe the top 4 quarterbacks right now, Nathan Rourke, um, Davis Alexander. I don't know why I always forget or kind of hesitate on Davis Alexander's name. It doesn't, I guess maybe just because the guys maybe started the least games. Davis Alexander, Bo Levi Mitchell, Vernon Adams Jr. People are probably like, Zach Collaros? I don't believe I have Zach Collaros in that conversation. Number one, he needs to just stay healthier. And obviously, you could say that with Davis Alexander. Maybe you have it as a one, kind of a them tied as maybe that fourth. But for me, Davis Alexander's trajectory is better than Zach Collaros's. Zach Collaros is definitely on heck to back 9. He's on the 19th green. It's time to go to the pro shop and time to get to the car. And no offense to Zach, he's had himself a phenomenal career. You could argue maybe the quarterback of the 2020s. Like, realistically, you could. Very much. It's not a slight at Zach. I just think he's kind of his prime has come, and I feel like gone for the most part. And watch him lead the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to the Grey Cup through the East. Wouldn't that be something? But for me, the quarterback matchup is a ultra intriguing one. I cannot wait for this matchup on Saturday. I feel like both quarterbacks are going to go toe to toe versus each other. and bring their A game, bring their best, and the competitors that they are, they're not going to want to lose to one another. So I'm going to have all eyes on this matchup, and I would imagine both quarterbacks will deliver, but I will go with Nathan Rourke. So let's get into the weapons for each team, and each team are very lucky to have a supply of weapons at their disposal. Let's start with BC, or maybe let's start with Calgary. As we'll kind of whip through them quickly. As I mentioned, Dietrich Mills in the season he's had, very dynamic season as the CFL's leading rusher. You look in that receiving core: Dominique Rhymes, Tevin Jones, Clark Barnes, Jalen Philpott. As I mentioned, Damian Alford, other guys in that receiving core that are looking to step up on a weekly basis. It's kind of on I don't want to say receiver one by committee, but they don't necessarily have a receiver one, which is I think great. Obviously, you might think of a guy like Dominic Grimes as kind of that guy, and he is, but I feel like um, they don't play offense necessarily like that, and obviously you can't, where you're trying to force feed him, and they're really, as Mark said, Vernon Adams Jr. I think has done a good job this year being a distributor once again, not really locking in one target. Obviously, Dominic Grimes you can maybe say is his guy, his go-to guy in those big moments, and throughout the course of a season, he's always going to be the high target guy. But I don't necessarily think that in this stage of his career, Dominic Grimes is a bona fide number one, and it's crazy to maybe we're kind of tomato here because I'm gonna say that yeah he's a legitimate receiver too. I think at this point of his career, I don't know if I could go as far to say a receiver one. Um, Obviously that's Calgary's weapons. When you look at BC, James Butler, Xander Horvath coming into the backfield. What a 1-2 punch that has kind of turned out to be for the BC Lions. And obviously, they've had to figure out some roster situations and being able to dress both of them on game days, which they've been able to do the last few weeks. And they need to do so throughout the playoffs. We'll monitor. Obviously James Butler, I believe, was limited today. We'll talk about the injury report to end. I think that's kind of more some precaution, playoff time of year type of situation. So the running backs for BC, look out, folks, because they could be at the forefront of a long playoff run. Let's hope for the BC Lions. Receiving core, as I mentioned on the MLP conversation with Nathan Rourke on that video, excuse me. I believe the narrative has changed so much from the beginning of the season on the BC Lions receivers coming into the year. I think a lot of people were, this is the seventh, eighth, ninth best receiving core in the CFL, having a lot of legitimate question marks about the depth, the 3 through 5 guys, and even a guy like Keon Hatcher, 31 years old, off a torn Achilles, and he leads the CFL the next season. Phenomenal. Obviously, came back, last year. He tore it in 2023 playoffs, comes back. 24 doesn't necessarily look like himself, if we're being honest. And 2025, he lights the CFL on fire, lets them know that I'm not going anywhere. I still have a lot of gas left in the tank. Because at the time, 2023, we were on this program, maybe at the time it was Canadian football, coast to coast gridiron. We were pounding the table that Keon Hatcher should be in that conversation with the Kenny Lawlers, Geno Lewis's, whoever you want to kind of group into that at the time, Dalton Schoen, whoever you want to group in that conversation. He should be right there. And now, even after this, Keon Hatcher should be amongst the league's best at receiver. Obviously, you got a guy like Justin McInnis, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, 1,200 yards this year. Aiden Ebert stepping up in a big way this year. Stanley Berryhill's kind of developed into the team's deep threat / just energy guy, bringing the juice on game days. Javon Katoy, as you guys know, we are big Javon Katoy fans and feel like he still has a level or two even to get to. Just unfortunately for him, there's only one ball to go around, as well as his usage. He's so valuable in other areas. Sometimes it kind of takes away some of his opportunities as a pass catcher. So let's get into the Stamps defense as we kind of look at the matchup, because it is no joke, folks, especially that front seven. Mark alluded to it. It's not just Hicks and Hutchinson and other guys along that defensive line, which is crazy to think that they could have Flo Rimolade as well along that defensive line. That could even bolster them that much more. We'll talk about it in the keys and kind of why we got to be on our P's and Q's and ready to go, especially up front with our offensive line, and not surrendering too much pressure. I have confidence with our our 2 tackles. outside to make sure things are all good, but have a little bit of concern up the middle, especially with Hutchinson and the havoc he's been able to create all season. So BC, I guess, when looking at BC's defense to kind of turn things around to that matchup, they've really turned a corner the last month, 6 weeks of the season. And you probably have to credit that to the in-season move of, you know, essentially Therese on the 1 game or the 6 game, whether that's legitimate injury or kind of a healthy scratch or not, is going to be a conversation for another day, an off-season conversation. And then Kameka Ture just getting straight up released for Levi Bell, Bradley and I, who have came in, Anai and Bell, and have been game changers. I'd go as far to say, because they've unlocked Matthew Betts. Is that fair to say? And obviously it's to credit Matthew Betts. Matthew Betts has been the guy that's been finishing the job, but I really do believe that in part due to the effectiveness of Levi Bell and Bradley at nine this season, and being able to come into the lineup, be effective rushers right away, being able to take some pressure off Betts. Teams probably not being able to pay as much attention to Betts and on an every snap basis. And Betts has what he's up to, 15 sacks now, double-digit sacks in the last 4 or 5 games, is lighting the world on fire. So they've really turned a corner. I do hesitate a little bit in terms of, are they able to put it together for a playoff Grey Cup run? We just saw them not only versus the Riders' first strings for the first half, in the second half when Jake Mayer came in and some of the rotational guys came in to play. It was shaky at times. Even some of the tackling was tough versus the Stampeders team. Dietrich Mills and them, you have to be on your P's and Q's tackling. That is a non-negotiable right there. So, they've turned the corner defensively, but this is a game you have to be on your P's and Q's. And even to go for a Grey Cup run, they have to be on their game to take out a Saskatchewan, and then whoever comes out of the East, whether it's a Montreal-led offense or a Hamilton-led offense, it's going to be no easy task. So the defense, although I will give them credit, that is probably my biggest concern going into the playoffs, is that can they continue to do this? Can they continue to play at the level that they have through the last 6 weeks going into the playoffs? So lastly, peaking at the right time is obviously fantastic, but that does not get you anywhere in the playoffs. You have to continue the success, because obviously at this point, you fizzle out. There's no, damn, we'll come back next week. You better be on your game. You better be on your A game, because you can get beat and you can be sent home before you even know what happens. And a really special season could be lost. A really, phenomenal year from Nathan Rourke, MOP caliber year from Nathan Rourke, could go down the drain just that quickly. So let's hope not. Let's hope the Lions are able to be on their P's and Q's, and even more so can kind of turn it into a 2-3 week stretch here that they can continue their high level of play going forward. Lastly, on the matchup, BC already going into this one 2-0. It is going to be no easy feat to beat the Calgary Stampeders 3 times in a year. They already say that about, in football, whatever you want to say, in hockey playoffs or NBA playoffs, when it's, you got a team, down 2-0 or whatever. It's hard to get them, 3-4. It's hard to get that third and fourth win. And even in the regular season series, when you're trying to get, that third win to, say, secure home playoff seed or whatever it may be, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. So it's going to be hard to beat a team, the Calgary Stampeders, if you're the BC Lions, for a third time this season, because they're going to be very motivated to not let it happen. They're going to understand some of the preparation, what BC's good at, but just as they are, the BC Lions will be prepared and ready to go to make some of their adjustments and tweak some things so they can come out victorious for the third time this season over the Calgary Stampeders. So without further ado, let's get into a quick injury report. It's nothing too quick to report. It is just day one as the time of this recording, as it is Tuesday. By the time this is uploaded, it'll be Wednesday. You guys might have the Wednesday injury report by then. But for the most part, it was reported already as well. James Butler as well as Justin McInnes, they did not practice today. Day one, it was reported it was maintenance day from JC Abbott out of 3 Down Nation. So I don't think it's nothing too crazy to monitor. Some limited participations that maybe you could monitor as the week goes on. Dejon Allen, Jarrell Broxton, both limited with arm injuries. TJ Lee limited as well with an elbow. Gary Peters limited with a knee. Obviously, he missed the regular season finale Jonah Tavai, as well as Corey Woodruff limited with a Tavai with a thigh, Woodruff with a knee. I would imagine those guys, especially come playoff time, they're going to go out there duct tape together. To be completely honest, those guys will be in the lineup. I would imagine those guys will be, monitored throughout the game because maybe that's something that they could go down with, in-game injuries, and then that's where you're really having to scramble. So it could be unfortunate, but I'd imagine this time of year. It is playoffs. You do not need to practice that much. You need to get the mental reps in. You need to understand what the game plan is, understand what the Calgary Stampeders do good, what they're going to try to attack you, and then it's really kind of those walkthrough type of stuff. The team versus air periods that you're able to really get a get a good look is what I'm trying to get here. So curious to see as the week progresses, but I would imagine this is very precautious, very playoff friendly day one injury report. So other than that, folks, let's get into three keys and then get out of here as we're already at 45 minutes. So let's get to my three keys of the game, starting with the number one key for the BC Lions in the West semifinal this Saturday versus the Calgary Stampeders. For me, is to get pressure on Vernon Adams Jr. Not only is that the most important key for me, I think that is kind of the forefront of not letting this Calgary Stampeders offense get going. I think if you're able to get pressure on Vernon Adams Jr., it kind of starts to create that happy feet in the pocket. And for me, it's not about getting home and bringing down Vernon Adams Jr. for sacks and stuff like that. Sacks is fantastic, but pressure a lot of the times is just as good. And maybe I shouldn't say just as good, but darn near close. Because as I said, once you get that pressure, quarterbacks start to get happy feet. They start to take their eyes off of downfield. They start to look at the rush and can really help a defense that much more. So when looking at key number two, for me, I have it as run the rock, pound the rock. And obviously, well, Cole, you have an MLP quarterback. For me, well, I would love to see us run the rock. Obviously, it is playoff football, folks. It is that time of year, and we're playing in BC Place, a stadium. Clean track, you're going to be able to throw it all around the yard. Looking forward, if the Lions are lucky enough to win, they're going to go to Saskatchewan. If they're lucky enough to win that, the Grey Cup's going to be played in Winnipeg. Their next two matchups are going to be outdoor in the prairies. Let's get that run game nice and oiled up, ready to go for hopefully a long playoff run. And obviously, they have been very effective the last all season. But even the last little bit, as they've kind of introduced the Horvath James Butler backfield, let's continue to lean into that run game, utilize it that much more. And even if that takes pressure off Rourke this week, am I mad to save let's save all the great Nathan Rourke's games we can for, say, a West Final, a Grey Cup. If we save if say Nathan Rourke was to have a great game in the West semifinal and then maybe has a subpar game in the West Final, let's maybe save that for a West Final if we can run the ball, lean on the run game that much more. I also think when looking at the Calgary Stampeders, it I shouldn't say maybe eliminates the pass rush, but slows it down that much more. You're not, as the Calgary Stampeders pass rush, able to just pin your ears back and just go try to hunt Nathan Rourke in that pocket. If the Lions are able to establish the run, be effective running the football, they're going to have to be, that much more hesitant. They can't just, be in their pass rush. They have to be a little bit more hesitant, as I said, kind of be a little bit calculated in their rush. So for me, I think allowing the run game to establish themselves, I think is super important. And then you know the new kind of tandem that's turned into Horvath and James Butler, keeping each other fresh and being able to run the football, I think will just benefit the Lions greatly going forward. So lastly, and you can argue even this is the most important key to the BC Lions' success in the Western semifinal on Saturday. My third key to victory for the BC Lions is taking advantage of the atmosphere with a fast start. It's been reported that, I believe 20K tickets have been sold already, and we are, early in the week. Projections show it as maybe 30K that should be in attendance on Saturday for the BC Lions. excited, amped up, ready to go. We just saw this past weekend, I believe, for the Whitecaps playoff game, 32,000 or something like that, and BC Place, and the atmosphere was great. So for me, a fast start where you take advantage of the atmosphere, you take advantage of 30,000 screaming fans that are ready to go to see your team perform at home. You also, I feel like, in a sense, if you're able to start fast, can start to almost take away Dietrich Mills from the Calgary Stampeders. You start to turn them into a little bit of one-dimensional. If you're able to, say get a touchdown and a field goal on maybe the first two possessions of the game, you put the Calgary Stampeders into, a 10-point hole early on, they're going to have to start to drop back and pass that much more. And you can almost, start to make them one-dimensional early in the football game by taking away their arguably their best player offensively, Dietrich Mills, because hopefully you're able to start fast and they're able to, they're going to kind of be forced into, their passing game early on in the game. Of course, starting fast is great. You have to build off that and finish that much more stronger. So starting fast is one thing. You cannot fizzle out. You have to make sure that you start fast and finish even stronger, because if you lull after, say the first quarter, it's, it could be all for naught, because the Calgary Stampeders could come back. They're a very good team to do so, as well as in the great Canadian game, folks. It is never over until it is over, especially in Canadian football with, time and whatnot. Do not allow the Calgary Stampeders to hang around in this football game. Lastly, folks, I believe that is it for our three keys to the game. That should be it. Lastly, this is what I'm going to predict. Hopefully, we're going to be able to circle around back, and maybe Cole was able to be bang on, hit a bullseye. I'm going to predict a 34-30 victory for the BC Lions on Saturday and have them moving on to the West Final versus Saskatchewan. So that is going to do it for us for our West semifinal preview this week. Once again, a huge shout out to Mark Steven for jumping on the channel here and previewing the matchup, giving a little bit of thoughts from the Calgary Stampeders standpoint. Of course, from us, you guys will see us next. As I said, we will be at the game on Saturday. We're going to try to do a post-game show live from BC Place following the game. If we're not able to do it following the game from BC Place, we'll do it at some point on Saturday evening and have that to you guys for after the game and out to you guys on our YouTube channel. Of course, if you guys enjoyed today's video, like the video down below, comment down below, let you guys know, or letting us know about how you guys are feeling about the matchup on Saturday, about the rest of the Grey Cup playoffs. Maybe even drop below who you guys think is going to be the Grey Cup matchup this season, who you think is going to win on semifinal Saturday, etc. Of course, when you guys are on the YouTube channel, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. When you guys subscribe, hit the notification bell. You guys get notified every time we go live or upload a video just like this one right here. Lastly, I would highly encourage you guys to go check out all of our BCSC coverage as well, and highly encourage you guys to check out the Canadian Bowl in 2 weeks' time. Hopefully, it's going to be able to work out timing-wise with maybe a Canadian Bowl, West Final, East Final. That would be greatly appreciated. Commissioner, if you're listening, please remember the little folks out in the Canadian Junior Football League, as it would be awesome to have that staggered and have no overlapping time. Of course, that is selfishly. But that is going to do it for us, folks. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed today's video, and we will catch you guys on the next one.